Hi, so it's Cromwellathon week 4, and it's Ros and Steve again. We will tempt Alf back, but not this week. He's promised next week. And we're both still really enjoying rereading the book.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd just think a little bit, maybe this time, about how in this section Cromwell changes that happen to his sort of personality and what he does. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me that he's starting to take more control in these chapters. It seems previously he's been observing and reacting to things, and now he's starting to
very nimbly kind of making the most of a situation.
And now he's starting to put things into place that how he wants things to be. He's more sure of his power, and he's starting to use it a bit more. So
he's trying to make the situation more rather than just react to it. So. Yeah, I think so. One thing that I noticed is that he's more assertive and almost more. We picked up on elements of threat in him earlier on, but he kind of perhaps hid that from others. You know, we clocked him thinking, I'm going to make a note of you and get you for that if I can. But now he's a bit more explicit about that.
He's always had that reputation, though, hasn't he? I mean, other characters have referred to him as being, the whatever he is, and a mercenary and a killer, and he's sort of slightly.
But there was a bit of a class element in that, wasn't there? It's like, you know. Yeah. As opposed to really seeing him as a threat.
Yeah, no, I think they are seeing that now. Yes, previously they've been slightly belittling him because of that. Now he is in a position of power.
Yeah.
And there's the scene where Harry Percy is kicking off again, and he goes to sort it out. And I can't remember. Is it one of the Howards says he wants to come with him, and they get out in the corridor, and Cromwell just pushes him up against the wall and sort of basically tells him to keep away.
Yeah, back off, mates, kind of thing. In effect, yes, and he feels able to do that and get away with it. So that's a change. In a way, he's losing, he doesn't have people to look up to now. He admired Wolsey and looked up to him, and he doesn't have role models anymore. He has to be it himself, doesn't he? And in fact, more and more people are relying on him.
Yes, well, he's becoming Wolsey in effect, isn't he? And he's becoming a sanctuary for people, and he takes people in. Waifs and strays become part of his household, particularly if they're from a Protestant background. I think he sees him almost like a refugee. Taking in refugees to a certain extent.
Yes, a bit. Yes, and we see him becoming friends with Cranmer.
Yes.
In this bit, don't we? Which is interesting. So, but they're kind of like friends as equals rather than the sort of paternal thing that Wolsey had towards him.
Although he does have, he now has a hold over Cranmer. Doesn't he? Because Cranmer has a wife and indeed a child.
Yes.
If the child has been born, but is on the way.
He's on the way. Yes. So he does. But it does seem like they're genuinely friends as well.
Oh yes. Well, I think they've got religion in common, haven't they? So
yes. Whereas he and Anne become closer and closer allies.
Yeah.
In this section, don't they? But then definitely not friends.
No.
Yeah,
they're using each other, aren't they, to get what they want? And
there is some mutual admiration.
Oh yeah.
I like the scene with Queen Catherine, and the way she appreciated him as someone to talk to, even though she also hated him. You know what I mean? There's a sort of a sense of him being, a kind of entertaining, or. Yes, a kind of intellectual kind of.
Well, she's been ghosted, hasn't she?
She has. She's been ghosted.
Yes, and then she's been isolated. She's been separated from her daughter. And so she, and although she has fought long and hard, it's that game is now over, and she's out of it. I think.
Yes.
I think it was. it was interesting. I mean, she does have contact with other people, and she talked about. I can't remember. There was some line about how she doesn't know what
the
Chapuis puts in his letters.
Back to the emperor, and
Cromwell was sort of stunned
what a blatant lie. Yes.
Didn't know whether to applaud it.
Yes, yes, I'll call it out. Yes, yeah. The person that he's starting to admire on some level, which is interesting, is Henry.
Yeah.
He's got more of an appreciation that Henry's not just this kind of, I don't know, random, foolish, self-interested. You know, that he's got more recognition of him as a force and a player and a
Well, yes, he's keen to manipulate that, I think, but he understands that power comes through Henry, and that Henry recognises that as well.
Yes.
And whilst he is driven by his own desires to a certain extent, he does want
desires literally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Henry does want stability, and he does want the continuity of the line. Now, whether that's for his own ends or for the ends of the kingdom is for the good of the kingdom is another matter, I guess.
Yes. No, it's interesting. One thing that I did notice, well, two actually. One is there's the Mantell throws in like little hints of peril, looming peril, doesn't she? And she uses Rafe to do that, I think, of like that Cromwell is so tied now to the fate of Anne, potentially, that's like kind of a risky strategy. So there's kind of this foreshadowing, I suppose.
Well, I guess that because we know the story, don't we?
But it's not as simple as that, the actual story. But you know, there is something to worry. I like that kind of. So there's like, so this is the period of his growing success. But you're always Mantell maintains that little bit of anxiety in you as a reader as to whether he'll be able to pull that off. And I also like a few times she talks about him feeling like tired and he'd like a break from it all.
Yes, there's talk about wanting a day off.
He doesn't get a day off.
And the king suggests him doing something, thinking, "Oh, is that going to be a day off?"
Yes. So that it's this incessant. He's got to like manage. He's got to manage the kingdom. He's got to manage the king's relationships. He's kind of helping out all these. People getting themselves in a pickle amongst sort of the nobility, and like Suffolk says, "Oh, how did you end up being the person that kind of fixed everything for us? How did that happen?" You know, but it wants him to do it, needs him to do it, and then there's his own household, and then the people in the city, and then all these kind of just the people that live near him and bring them all their neighbourhood disputes. So he's got so much that he's juggling. Yeah.
And he still sees himself to an extent as a merchant, doesn't he? Yes, he views himself as a merchant. That's possibly why he's doing all of this, because again he's looking for stability, because he knows that merchants are more likely to thrive in a relatively stable society. Although he's not above kicking some things over in his willingness to do that.
And there's something that we were talking about walking to town yesterday, was you saying about how he's a European.
Yes, he certainly he seems to locate himself in Europe, and we talked last time about the languages.
Yes.
He speaks a lot of languages, but he sees himself that he has contacts not just in the merchants area, but also in the religious area, and he knows where the people are who are printing the Bibles and what they're saying and who they're contacting and those sorts of things. So he has an overview on
a wider perspective. So it's not just that he's thinking about the interests of the king and England, but he sees it. He sees the big picture and gets frustrated sometimes by people around him who don't see that big picture.
Well, I think he understands the Reformation is going to be a huge thing.
But also there was a bit that you actually quoted to me as you were reading it. You read out to me because you liked it. You were so struck by it, where he's talking about where decisions are really made.
Yeah, well, that's when he's dealing with Harry Percy again, isn't it? And although he doesn't, I think this is in his head rather than what he's saying to Harry Percy. But he does basically point out to Percy that he's got no money.
Yes.
and then there's this long sort of internal piece about where the actual power lies, where the money. It's all about the money. It's all about the merchants. It's not just here in England. Is there other people have it, and they will keep
decisions in Florence or in Antwerp, and it's not just who's got the swords and the bullets or whatever. So that's anachronistic. But you know what I mean? It's who pays for them, who makes them and funds them, and because Percy says at one stage that he's got his army. He said, "Well, you're going to pay them with smiles." Yes, great line, great line. There's still so many moments of just really lovely humour in this, aren't there? And So, do you think that's enough for this week?
I think so.
See you next week with Alpha Hope.